As North Korea prepares reportedly a new missile that one Russian lawmaker claims could hit the west coast of our country, President Trump is not backing down in his cryptic reminders of what Kim Jong-un's regime could face if it does indeed threaten us. Yesterday, he tweeted this, quote, "Presidents and their administrations have been talking to North Korea for 25 years. Agreements made and massive amounts of money paid. Hasn't worked. Agreements violated before the ink was dry, making fools of U.S. negotiators. Sorry, but only one thing will work." For more on that one thing, we're joined by Ambassador John Bolton, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, a Fox News contributor, and chairman of the Gatestone Institute here in New York. Ambassador, the term "only one thing," is this type of language bellicose and dangerous and irresponsible, as critics claim, or is it a potent reminder of what Kim Jong-un could face?
Well, I don't think the language really has any effect on the calculations. I mean, people know the president tweets, and it's a way to hear from him unmediated by the press. But the fact is, his central point is that 3 prior administrations over a 25-year period have tried the State Department's favorite approach, a mixture of carrots and sticks, incentives and disincentives, to try and stop the North Koreans, and it's failed for 25 years. Susan Rice, Barack Obama's national security advisor, admitted this a few weeks ago in an op-ed in the New York Times. So I think the key point is, don't think that talking to North Korea at this point is going to have any impact is real. Now, there are other options out there. Which one the president was referring to, I don't know. I think there's at least one Freudian slip, one diplomatic option left. We've talked about before, negotiating with China to reunite the Korean Peninsula. Maybe that's what he was referring to.
Or do you think there's really is any possibility of that? I mean, he won't even Kim Jong-un won't even let the Chinese envoy that Beijing has established for his country into North Korea.
Yeah. Look, the Chinese, I think, certainly younger Chinese leaders, increasingly appreciate that carrying around this ugly piece of baggage called North Korea doesn't benefit China, that the existence of the North Korean regime is not an effective buffer against the United States, and that its continuing nuclear weapons program poses risks for China. For example, if Japan says, we're not going to depend on the U.S. nuclear umbrella, we're going to get our own nuclear capability, that's a direct threat to China. So there's a way here to talk to the Chinese. I think there's a deal. I could describe the parameters of it again, but the point is, if you want to try a diplomatic option, don't waste your time talking to the Kim family dictatorship. Talk to the people in Beijing.
And what type of deal specifically do you recommend?
Well, I think reunification can come in the following way. The Chinese fear a couple things if North Korea were to collapse, for example, after a U.S. military strike against the nuclear program. The first thing they fear, massive flows of North Korean refugees. We can deal with that because if the regime collapsed, the South Koreans would fear their own flow of North Korean refugees. So there's a constructive way to deal with that. And the other thing the Chinese don't want more than anything else is American troops on their border with Korea, the Yalu River and the Tumen River. And honestly, we don't want to be along those rivers any more than we want to be deployed today along the demilitarized zone. We want American forces in Korea at the tip of the peninsula so they're rapidly deployable elsewhere in Asia. There's a deal there with China. It's not an easy negotiation. I wish we'd started long ago. But for those who think that the military option is unimaginable, this is the most likely diplomatic solution. So people can dismiss it if they want, but it only constrains what is available, which is increasingly looking at military force to use against the North's program.
Well, I mean, of course, if there is military force, there are the predictions of mass, overwhelming casualties. They're beyond comprehension.
Well, nobody wants to use military force, but here's the question that the President of the United States has to answer. Are we prepared to live forever with North Korea having nuclear weapons? Will Americans be under that threat as far as the eye can see? I find that unacceptable. I think there are substantial things that could be done to mitigate the effect on South Korea. We should bend every effort to that effect. But fundamentally, the President's responsible for protecting Americans.
And finally, in terms of protecting Americans, there are this Russian lawmaker saying that they're about to test a new long-range missile that he says they showed the calculations could reach the U.S. mainland on the West Coast. This could come on Tuesday because it's the anniversary of the Workers' Party's founding. So what do we do if indeed they do launch this missile? Not this far, but potentially this far, and it shows that they do have the capability of hitting us.
Yeah. Well, I think most analysts have believed for some time that North Korea did have a missile capable of hitting some part of the United States, perhaps even further than just the West Coast. Very interesting. They showed these calculations to Russians, since many fear that Russian ballistic missile experts have been helping with their program over the years in any case. And I think this is the kind of propaganda that North Korea has used effectively in the past to back America away from taking a strong position. They succeeded. I mentioned Susan Rice a moment ago. She's prepared to accept North Korea with nuclear weapons. I bet she and President Obama ultimately are willing to accept Iran with nuclear weapons. I'm not willing to accept either one.
Russia and Iran, besides apparently helping the North Koreans. So we shall see what happens on Tuesday, October 10th. Ambassador John Bolton, as always, thank you for your analysis.
Thank you, Eric.